What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 28 of the Silver and Gold. I'm Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And I hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. And, I'm certainly hoping that everybody had a better holiday weekend than the 49ers and us 49er fans who had it rough. But today we're going to be talking about some good, some bad, and some ugly. But first, let's start off with the good, Mike. How are you feeling about that Raiders-Chiefs game?
I feel fantastic. The Christmas miracle indeed happened. I felt pretty early on in that game. I felt in the first quarter like, yeah, we're gonna win this game. And I know I texted you and I said, I take it back. I should have never said anything about Josh Jacobs being out. I should you run it back from last week's episode. I was all in. I was like, give me the Raiders. We're going to win. We're going to get the Christmas miracle. We're going to win. I said in the offseason, the Raiders will win at least one game this season against the Chiefs, and I was standing by it. And then at the last second, I was like, but I'll just throw in like if Jacobs plays. But it was like, I thought Jacobs was playing. I thought Jacobs was playing against the Chargers. And he sits out, and I was like, he's playing against the Chiefs. Like he was healing up just to play the Chiefs. Because there was talk, like I think Antonio Pierce before or after the Charger game said, like, Josh Jacobs was trying to go, and we appreciated that, but we wanted to preserve him. So I was like, he's gonna play. He's gonna play, and we're gonna beat the Chiefs. So just to speak on the Charger game, just in the fact that I just said, mentioned that 63-21 win. Just had to mention that again. I did hear something interesting recently that part of the reason why the Raiders kept running up the score on the Chargers was because they were going to play the Chiefs the following week. So they wanted to mentally prepare for that and just keep it all gas, no brakes, and continue that going even in the second half when they were already up 42-0. So I didn't consider that as a reason for why they ran up the score. But it makes sense, and now it tracks. You go out there. Okay. The first quarter of the game against the Chiefs had negative yardage on offense. I think it was like the Chiefs had like negative 25 yards at the end of the first quarter. And I was watching the game with my stepdad, who's a Niner fan, and I was like, that's the same defense that played the Chargers last week. And then I don't know if it was the second quarter. Yes, in the second quarter, they get the back-to-back touchdowns a second week in a row. 2 weeks in a row, the same defense, back-to-back touchdowns within 7 seconds. A fumble 6 with a fat man touchdown, and then a pick 6 by Jack Jones. The same exact thing happened 2 weeks in a row.
Before you move on from that,
I was going to kind of go quarter by quarter, but I'll just say things here.
Okay. I do want to stay on that point since we're talking about the pick 6 that Jack Jones had. Travis Kelce on his New Heights podcast with his brother Jason, he said that they gave the Raiders the game as like a Christmas gift. To me, it felt more like the Grinch stole Christmas, and I want to know how you feel about Jack Jones after the pick 6 going up to a little Chiefs fan in the front, the front row, whatever section it was, and going to hand them the ball and pulls it right back. How do you feel about that?
I loved it because I think Chiefs fans deserve that shit. But granted, it's a little kid, right? I will say this, though. That was all a camera trick. That was all a matter of how you see things that are presented to you. What actually happened, Jack Jones explained on Twitter. You could probably find the tweet, but it's whatever. Jack Jones, let's see if I can find his ad at least, so maybe you can search for it. So basically what happened was Jack Jones gets the pick six. He stares down Patrick Mahomes. Amazing. And then he goes in, and I was, okay, literally the way that this happened was hilarious, okay? We were watching the game on CBS, like usual, right? That's how I like to watch my football games is CBS. Well, at the same time, they also had the Nickelodeon live feed for the Raider and Chiefs game, right? So I decided, I'm going to show everybody that's sitting here for Christmas with me, my mom, my sister, my stepdad, and my little brother. I was like, let me show them the Nickelodeon feed. I was like, watch, like if they score a touchdown, you'll see like slime and stuff. I literally changed it to Nickelodeon right after the Raiders got the fumble six. I was like, oh, we just missed the slime. Kickoff, whatever. Next play, Patrick Mahomes throws the pass. He forces it to the receiver. Jack Jones picks it off, takes it for the touchdown, right? Now the slime starts coming. It was hilarious. I was dying laughing. I'm like, we just took a huge lead, and they got a pick six to show. I'm going to send you the tweet right now to show the slime, on the Nickelodeon feed. So what happened for me was I didn't see the camera angle of Jack Jones handing the football to the kid because the slime blocked it. So then I see on Twitter 5 minutes later, all these people tweeting about Jack Jones being the Grinch and stealing the ball back from the kid. Now, here's the thing. Again, it's all a camera trick. Right as he did that, the camera cuts. So it looks like he took it back and he probably went to the locker or went to the sideline and like, ha, 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 right? What actually happened, as you can pull up the tweet, I just sent it to you. There was a guy a row behind the kid trying to grab the football. So Jack Jones was taking it from that guy, as in, hey, dude, this is for the kid, not you. But, of course, the camera doesn't show us that.
Mm-hmm.
So watch the guy in all black. He's trying to reach over the kid, right? And he calls this dude Brad Ziegler Lollipop, which is hilarious.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not all
full screen.
Yeah. There he is. He's reaching over the family, trying to get the ball.
Yeah, two people trying to snatch it from this kid.
Yeah. So
I thought he genuinely was like, "Oh, you want this ball?" He's like, "Hell no! I just intercepted Mahomes, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. I'm gonna keep this ball." I thought it was like, fuck you thought you were gonna get this ball. And that's what I thought.
Oh, that's what I thought too. I was laughing my ass off until I found out later, what actually happened. But as far as Travis Kelce saying that they gave up the game, I can understand him thinking that way because when we got the fumble six, when Bilal Nichols returns the touchdown on the fumble, that was a play where the Chiefs decided on their own to get cute. And they fucking ate the bullet for it. And I love it. Okay, that was their fault for fumbling the ball because they direct snap it to Isaiah Pacheco, and then he tries the forward handoff to Mahomes, and he and Mahomes bobble the handoff. They fumble it, but at the same time, the offensive line did not block well in that play because Adam Butler was right there. He takes down Mahomes. He doesn't allow him to pick that ball back up. In the process, also blocks Isaiah Pacheco, and then Bilal Nichols comes right back, gets the ball, touchdown. Poorly executed by the Chiefs, yes, but also, Adam Butler and Bilal Nichols were there for a reason, right? Adam Butler, the Raiders have to re-sign him. He's playing like a starting defensive tackle, okay? And as I mentioned earlier, this felt like the same exact defense as last week against the Chargers. I do not think for a second that the Chiefs lost this game. I think the Raiders won this game. The old Chiefs would probably have won this game. Sure, you can say that if you want, because I don't think many teams can lose to a team that doesn't complete a pass from the second quarter and on in a game. That's what the Raiders did to the Chiefs. They did not complete a pass in the second quarter or later in this game. and yet the Chiefs couldn't recover after those two, defensive touchdowns for the Raiders. Again, as I have said all season, the defense carried this team. And I cannot believe I've said that for a full season. There comes a point where you think, all right, they're just having a few good games, this defense. Like, all right, I've seen it before. 2016, Khalil Mack, right? This is all season. This is consistency. This is a thing now. This is official. Like, this is a good defense. I can't believe it. Yeah, so the one positive thing I'll say towards the Chiefs, this is the only thing I can say, L'Jarius Sneed had a hell of a game. And he's probably their best defender. I know a lot of people talk about Nick Bolton. Chris Jones is great, but L'Jarius Sneed, man, he was just blanketing Davante Adams all game. And he got hurt at one point in like the third or fourth quarter, and he came right back in. So Davante Adams got one catch for 4 yards in the first quarter, didn't receive a pass the rest of the game. And I think that was also in large part Aiden O'Connell's fault. And then before I go quarter by quarter here, just the last thing I'll say, at least for Aiden O'Connell, he, like I mentioned, did not complete a pass after the second quarter or after the first quarter. That's unheard of, especially in a win, okay? I will say this about Aiden. Obviously, he didn't lose us the game, but he also didn't win us the game, The defense clearly won the game for the Raiders. And then paired with Zamir White running, at the end of the game and getting the big first downs, which that's a big testament to the offensive line. But what Aiden O'Connell did in this game was he was at times inaccurate, especially in the second quarter, third quarter. He didn't complete the passes, but he never threw a pass that was worthy of a turnover. And that's what it helped in winning this game. So I will give him credit there for not throwing a turnover-worthy play or pass. But he also didn't do anything that won the game. He essentially game managed and just didn't get picked off, So take that however you want. I just can't help but think that if you put a mobile quarterback in place of Aiden O'Connell, we would have beat them by 20.
I saw you
simply.
Earlier. I think you retweeted Ted Nguyen about possibly getting Justin Fields. I could see where this Raiders team would just be a run it down your throat team if they had Justin Fields.
Absolutely. And I know I told you a couple weeks ago, let's say a couple months ago, I mentioned on here that, I predicted the Raiders would trade for Davante Adams. And I even did it in Madden because I like to be realistic. Well, this year I got Madden, and the first thing I did was I traded for Justin Fields. I simmed this entire season. I actually went in and put every single game up until it was like week 7. I put every single game correctly up until that point, and then I simmed the rest of the season. In the offseason, I traded for Justin Fields because the Bears are going to draft a quarterback. Yeah, I could see it, and I would not be mad at all because I want a mobile quarterback. Do I think that he can carry this team to a Super Bowl? No. But he could provide something that Aiden O'Connell can't while still performing at the same level, if not better, as a passer compared to Aiden O'Connell. It would be a massive upgrade.
Question. What would be the trade package that you would be most willing to give? Like, obviously, you wouldn't mind giving the least amount that you can, but what's the most that you would be willing to feel comfortable with as a fan in order to get Justin Fields?
I would be willing, at least this is what I did in Madden. Maybe this isn't a good way to compare it. I gave up 2 second-round picks. So I'd say what I'd be comfortable with is 2 second-round picks plus maybe like a 5th-round pick. I think that could get the job done, especially if they've already drafted a quarterback or they clearly plan to. I mean, okay, here's the issue isn't the trade package or isn't what the Bears are asking for. It's more of what does the opposing teams also offer? So what do the Falcons offer? What do maybe the Vikings offer? I think they're going to keep Kirk Cousins, but let's just say, right? There are all these teams that are going to need quarterbacks. Maybe the Broncos. What do the Broncos offer? That's something we could talk about later. So I think it's more about what do other teams offer? Does somebody offer a first round pick? That should get the deal done. Yeah, like okay. We'll talk more about the Broncos and Russell Wilson, but as the weeks go by, it feels like more and more teams are going to need quarterbacks this offseason, and this draft is supposed to be loaded with quarterback talent. It's pretty clear to me that trading up for quarterbacks is going to be a popular thing in this draft. I can see the Broncos doing it. You know, Sean Payton's not going to be waiting around, right? I could see other teams doing it. Maybe the cost is too rich for a team like the Raiders, who are still not quite there. But then again, I still think they might just be a quarterback away when you really look at this team. Probably like another offensive guard and defensive tackle. But again, I think you put Justin Fields on this team this past weekend against the Chiefs, you beat him by at least 14, instead of just 6 or whatever it was. So, maybe trading up for a first-round quarterback is too costly, whereas trading for Justin Fields isn't as costly. It won't cost you 2 first-round picks. It might just cost you 2 second-round picks plus another pick.
Like Justin Fields is probably a better bargain than going up and getting an inexperienced quarterback from college that may or may not work out.
Yeah, and the way that it worked for me on Madden, and I'm assuming this is how it's going to be, is he has 1 year left next season on his rookie deal, but the team that trades for him can also determine whether or not they want to go through with the 5th-year option. And I did on Madden. So essentially you can trade for him and you have a 2-year window to either determine is he the guy and re-sign him, or at the end, towards the following offseason, you could draft a quarterback, right? It's essentially what the Raiders wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to be, but better, because he's mobile. He has better capabilities at the quarterback position than Garoppolo ever has, right? He's probably a stopgap quarterback unless he proves that he's the guy, because he could, so.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the Chiefs game, every time that the Raiders blitz Robert Spillane, it's a sack. And I'm not saying he's getting the sack. It's this beautifully designed stunt blitz attack on the offensive line, and it works every single time. That first drive was beautiful. It was like sack, tackle for loss, sack. Chiefs punt, right? There was a big sack that Andre James gave up to Chris Jones. I think Andre James is gone this offseason. I think you kick Dylan Parham to center and you figure out your 2 guard spots. We have Colton Miller at left tackle. Again, Thayer Munford, he's absolutely killing it at offensive tackle, whether it's left or right. He could be our starting right tackle next year, and if they have to, they can let Jermaine Illuminor walk. There was a fake reverse pass. So a fake handoff for reverse, and then O'Connell kind of did a mini bootleg and then threw it to Jacoby Myers and went for a 25-yard gain. It was probably the best play call I have seen from Bo Hardegree to date. Absolutely beautiful. And then the last thing I have for the first quarter, the Raiders go down the field. They get a field goal, right? It's 3-0 Raiders, maybe the middle of the first quarter. And I put in my notes, field goals won't get it done against Kansas City. And I was right. Now, the offense only scored 2 field goals, but the defense scored 2 touchdowns, and that got it done against the Chiefs. So, paired with, I don't know how many times they forced the Chiefs to punt, but it was a lot. It was a lot more than I've ever been used to. So, it was really nice to see. And then the Chiefs scored a touchdown in the early second quarter, and it was on this wildcat play to Pacheco where he faked a handoff back to Mahomes. It was the exact same play that the Raiders scored on the Chargers with number 34. Brandon Bolden. The same exact play. It was like they were trying to toy with us. Yeah, that didn't work out for them. And they got the touchdown, but, scoreboard, right? the Raiders offense was beginning to have issues moving the ball downfield in the second quarter. A lot of inaccurate passes from Aiden O'Connell. The Chiefs were getting a lot of pressure on O'Connell, and that was a little alarming, but I think that's just a Chiefs thing, Their defensive coordinator is great. So, I mean, O'Connell did what he could, it seemed like, but he was trying to predict where to throw the ball rather than having the amount of time necessary to get the throw off. So it wasn't working on offense. The thing I will say, though, the Chiefs were like selling out for the run and I think they were trying to dare O'Connell to throw the ball. When the Raiders actually did run the ball, let's say they ran the ball 20 times, I would say 18 or 19 of them went for positive yardage. And yet the Chiefs defense was selling out for the run every single play.
This brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to extend Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, we had a debate on this on X, on Twitter, like a week or two ago after the Charger game. And I was like, I mean, I'm keeping him. Like the only player that's under contract for the Raiders at running back next season is Zamir White. Now, I remember in the preseason, there were a lot of people saying that, oh, Zamir White, he sucks because he wasn't running that well in the preseason. I think Zamir White's good. But regardless, I'm not comfortable with only having him on the roster going into next season. I think I would franchise tag Josh Jacobs. I still stand by that. But this is now 2 weeks in a row where the Raiders run all over their opposing team, division rivals, without Josh Jacobs, with a running back by committee, with Zamir White and then a 31-year-old Amir Abdullah. That's impressive. So,
real quick, I do hear that dog barking in the background, but I think it is probably Zamir White, because he's got that dog in him, just running all over his opponents.
Yeah. Yeah, I just Zamir White had a great game against the Chiefs. Not quite as great against the Chargers, but that Chiefs game, it was impressive. But the more time goes by, it feels like, well, you clearly don't need Josh Jacobs, right? Mm-hmm. So if they were to determine like, hey, we can let him walk, okay, fine. But I think he's a leader in the locker room. He has a big locker room presence to him, right? I would at least keep him for one more year. I think you can do a lot of damage with him. And having that great running back in the backfield to pair with a quarterback is big. So I still think he's important to the team. I understand that a running back by committee can work, but also if you have that running back by committee and one of them just gets in the slump, it's like you can't fully trust them. Whereas Josh Jacobs, I can trust him any given game, and that's valuable. So I'm still on the side of re-signing him, but I'm having a hard time with giving him a long-term deal as far as, how to build a roster. But I'm easily giving him the franchise tag again, but he probably won't be happy.
He probably won't accept it. Or, because he probably figured that this season was his season to take the franchise tag, and then he was going to get restructured. But I think the complicated factor is that was with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. And, now things change. You've got Antonio Pierce as the main guy. And who's the GM again? It's Champ Kelly.
Yeah, Champ Kelly. I will say this, if you want to pull up some comments too. One thing about Champ Kelly, for one thing, he was in the building with the Bears when they drafted Justin Fields. That is something to consider. And then like Joel says, I think in the comments, Antonio Pierce loves Josh Jacobs. So, yeah, if he can take a discount, that'd be cool. I don't think Jacobs is the type to want a discount. I know he held out all offseason because he was under the tag. That's how all the running backs are. Like, they're not going to be happy about it. But what sucks for him is, if the Raiders were, you could call it, dumb enough to give him a 4-year deal last offseason. He didn't play nearly as good this season as last year. Last year, he was arguably, not really, but arguably the best running back in football, other than probably McCaffrey, but statistically, right? And this year, it's like, the injuries don't help, but I don't even know if he was on pace for 1,000 yards. He probably was, but it wasn't like 1,600 yards like he got last year.
Mm-hmm.
But the offense has also struggled insanely. Since Carr's been gone, there's no deep ball, threat this year. So teams can sell out for the run like the Chiefs did this past week, because Aiden O'Connell doesn't scare them. And that's another aspect of why I want a different quarterback. Mm-hmm. So,
and then while we have Antonio Pierce, just kind of on topic as a factor of Josh Jacobs, I would just like to take back something that I said last week when I said Antonio Pierce has no shot to win this job. I think as of right now, I definitely owe Antonio Pierce an apology because he went out and beat the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions. And now the Raiders are possibly, it's kind of a long shot, but they still have an opportunity to go to the playoffs. And I think that they're playing much better with Antonio Pierce at the helm than they were with the previous coach. So not only do I think Antonio Pierce still has an opportunity to win this job, I think he's probably the favorite to keep the job.
Yeah, I think I still think that Mark Davis probably goes through the process, in part because I think he has to. I saw conflicting reports about whether or not they are allowed to rescind the interim tag and just make him the coach and Champ Kelly the GM without going through the Rooney Rule hiring process. I saw some people that say, oh, they can, and others that said, no, they have to go through it. So we'll see. But I think without a doubt, he's the coach. And I think if Mark Davis has half a brain, you keep Antonio Pierce without a doubt. You keep Champ Kelly because he has a hold on the roster, and he probably works really well with Antonio Pierce, right? They've been working together already. And it was already a thing when Ziegler was hired. Champ Kelly was interviewed for our vacant GM spot. He was in the GM circulation that offseason with other teams too. He left the Bears because they were going through a different regime, came to the Raiders to become the vice GM, whatever the term is. He's a great GM. He's a great GM candidate, and what he's known for is talent evaluation. He's apparently really good at it. So that's what the Raiders wanted in Mike Mayock. Maybe this is the right guy, Champ Kelly, right? Mm-hmm. I would keep them and give them short-term deals. Right now, I think the world of Antonio Pierce. And I think, you said you have to apologize to Antonio Pierce. I remember our podcast after the Vikings game. Oh man, what is his name? He usually comments like every podcast. I'm forgetting his name right now. I'm so sorry. He's a Raider fan. He comes in. Anthony. He said Anthony, thank you. Yes, Anthony. He said Antonio Pierce stinks. And I didn't agree with him. I just said, thank you, Anthony. Because I was like, I don't think he stinks. It's funny. Like, I really do think the world of Antonio Pierce. I wrote this in my notes just because I didn't want to forget anything. I was going to read it at the end, but I'm just going to read it now because it's on topic. To me, Antonio Pierce is the head coach, without a doubt. He is now 4-3. A winning record. And my big thing when he became the interim coach, I was like, if he leaves the end of the season, I don't care if they make the playoffs or not. And I had serious doubts about a playoff run, and here we are. We are in a playoff run. We'll get to that. If he ends the season with a winning record, I would give him the job. Well, he's 4-3 right now, and he's got 2 very winnable games coming up. And that Vikings game, I do not fault him one bit for losing. That was the offense. That was a game where Aiden O'Connell lost us the game. Okay? And then Hunter Renfrow fumbling doesn't help, but in the red zone. Antonio Pierce, 4-3 as head coach. He has shown every quality that I want in a Raiders head coach. He's building a strong culture. Very strong culture, especially on defense. He delegates, okay? He lets his coordinators do the coordinating. He lets his captains help lead the locker room, right? He doesn't have an ego. He has brought in great talent like Jack Jones. And I think his name is Janarius Robinson. He's brought in some good players in a short amount of time. Without Jack Jones, I don't think we beat the Chiefs, honestly. Antonio Pierce is a former player, former champion. And, those two things, those bring respect. The team has respect for him. And respect is something that's earned, and it can very easily be lost and possibly never be had in a guy like Josh McDaniels, right? Fucking Antonio Pierce has a stranglehold on the respect of this team right now. So he wants to be a Raider. He was born a Raider, and I think he should remain a Raider for as long as he can succeed. So
I would give him a 1 to 2 year deal in the offseason. That's what I would do if I was Mark Davis, because it's like, he took over and already, he didn't have an offseason to prepare with this team. So you never know if that would have, if he would have been even better than he is right now, or if it might have, hurt him. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Last few things I'll say in the Chiefs game. First off, I've been yelling his name all season, but Malcolm Kuntz, have a fucking game. I think that's his breakout game. On Christmas, it had the most viewers of the day, I think, of all the 3 different games. 3 sacks, 9 pressures. He had career best in every category. He forced another fumble. I think he did. Yeah. But regardless, massive game for Malcolm Kuntz. Trevon Merrick almost got a pick. He was playing pretty well. Nate Hobbs had a huge pass breakup at the end of the game. He had a few other plays where he's on and off for me. He'll not be the best in coverage and then also make big plays for for a loss or get a pick or a big pass deflection. Again, Jack Jones. Max Crosby was also in there all day. Yeah. Sorry. How do I say it? It was just something came up. Why did I just lose my train of thought? The entire defense just had great games. Okay, in coverage, also on offense, in Arrowhead, the Raiders were able to outrush the Chiefs without Josh Jacobs. And I know we were just talking about Josh Jacobs, right? That's another case for not keeping Jacobs if you want to put that money towards defense or something like that. When you can outrush the Chiefs without him, that's huge, right? Plain and simply, I think the Raiders looked better coached. I don't know the last time that I've mentioned this, but they are the least penalized team in football, period. And that seems like a pretty hard thing to do when you go through a coaching change mid-season. And I mean, that's a little bit of a testament towards Josh McDaniels and probably his coaching staff that he put together, but very much so on Antonio Pierce as well. And specifically all of the coaches, that are positional coaches. So that's about all I have for the Chiefs game. 14-20 victory for the Raiders, and a very big victory at that.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, I do want to get to some comments, and then we're going to get into the Colts preview. But Joel says, "Hey boys, happy holidays." Joel, I hope you had a happy, I was going to say Merry Christmas, but I hope I don't know if you celebrate Christmas. If you did, I hope you and your family had a great, Christmas. If not, whichever holiday that you chose to celebrate this holiday season. Joel also said, I think this was commented while we were showing the Jack Jones play. That kid should know better than wanting a ball from the opposing team. Hey, if I was that kid, I would still I want a ball regardless. Like if I was like, let's just say at a Giants game and like the other team hit a home run, I'd keep the ball.
Yeah.
And then Joel also says, I would be down. This is referring to Justin Fields. I would be down with that depending on what the Bears want and if they even move on from Fields. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like they might decide to run it back. I don't know. It kind of feels like that there's going to be a change in Chicago. That's just like what my gut tells me, but I don't know.
I think at quarterback, yeah. I think at the end of the day, they're going to draft a quarterback and get some assets through Justin Fields because as nice as Fields' contract still is for a team that trades for him, it's also like the Bears have the ultimate opportunity to go draft a guy, potentially a generational guy in USC's quarterback. And I don't even care for his name anymore. I'm so out on him.
Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams, yeah. There's no way that we're going to get him, but also I still get like these little red flags from him here and there. For example, the backup quarterback for USC played in the bowl game, I think last night or 2 nights ago, and threw 6 touchdowns. So what does that say? Right? Anyways. I think the Bears are probably going to go with the smart decision and draft a quarterback because now you have 5 years instead of 2 years on a cheap quarterback deal. So,
yeah, I think we're ready to move on. Raiders versus Colts preview. Mike, yes. I'm going to let you have the floor. I'm currently not feeling well, and I'm going to take like a 5-minute break. But what were you going to say, Mike?
Can you put the tweet that I sent you?
It's like a picture?
Yeah, do the first one just for a second.
Are you referring to...
Oh, it didn't. Yeah, just do the only one that I sent then. For some reason, the other one didn't send. But yeah, put that one up.
Okay, real quick, let me just close this and... Well, I guess I need it open. All right. Cool.
Okay. There we go. Raiders versus Colts. All right. I'm going to talk more about the playoff seedings than the actual game. I mean, I'll get into the game really quick here. First and foremost, the Raiders have to stop the run. The Colts are going to have Jonathan Taylor. And I knew that pretty early on. Like when he got hurt, whatever, okay, I was like, I know how this is going to go. He's going to come back specifically for the Raider game, and he's going to tear it up on us, all right? The Raiders did a really good job against the Chiefs at stopping the run. That has been probably the biggest struggle for the Raiders defense this season, has been stopping the run. If they can limit Jonathan Taylor, that would be huge for this game. The Colts last week, Christmas weekend, lost a huge game against the Falcons. A week before that, the Falcons lost to the Panthers. So I don't know what's going on there. The Falcons are like one of those teams that are just like any given Sunday. I really don't. I wish I could have seen more from the Colts and Falcons game. I don't know if they just did a really good job of stopping the run, the Falcons on the Colts, or if they just outright demolished them, or if the Colts just didn't show up to play. I don't know what it was. I saw a little bit of Gardner Minshew's, post-game press conference, and he was essentially saying like, hey, we can't just go in here and expect to win all the time. Like, you have to go out there and play. These are NFL teams, yada, yada, yada. So at the end of the day, we have to stop Jonathan Taylor. We have to force turnovers like we have in the past 2 weeks, right? And I think I would like to see Josh Jacobs play. You got to develop the run game. You got to own the time of possession. And Aiden O'Connell has to play better. These last 2 weeks are huge. And I think the picture on the screen is probably a big example in why. I just saw Josh's comment. Okay. Playoff scenario. The Raiders, no matter what, the Raiders have to win out. And this was dating back to, the Chiefs game, right? I had this good gut feeling that we would win, but I was like I'm gonna put it all on the table and say, hey, we're gonna win this game. That doesn't mean that I was going in like guaranteeing it. I was just like, I'm feeling good about it. We beat the Chiefs. That's a massive hurdle. Now we have the Colts, who are, as you can see, they are currently the 7th seed in the AFC at 8-7, right? Because let me check, because I think the Raiders are 7-8. Yeah, I want to say that's true. Let's see here, NFL. Let's look at the standings. If my phone will load. Let's just say I'm right for now. 8-7, right? We'll just go down the list. Conference, please. Okay. As far as wins go, you have the Ravens at 12-3. They got a big win. We'll talk about that. Miami 11-4. They got a big win against the Cowboys. Cleveland 10-5. Kansas City's 9-6. Buffalo is 9-6. The Jaguars are 8-7. They have blown it since the beginning of the season. They were tied for the 1 seed at one point, and they had a very good shot at attaining the 1 seed at one point. They could lose to the Titans the final week of the season, and they could not be in the playoffs, period. The Jaguars. So that's not a good look. You also have the Colts and Texans at 8-7, tied with the Jags. So that's been a 3-way tie for a while now, and it's still going. One of those teams is obviously going to win the division. It's entirely possible that the other two teams don't even make the playoffs, depending on how games go. Pittsburgh's 8-7. The Bengals are 8-7. So right now we have Jags on top of the division because of probably whether it's divisional or conference wins. The Browns are a step ahead of everybody in the wild card race. They're going to make it. They'll probably beat the Jets and lock their way in. Bengals at the 6th seed. They have the Chiefs and the Browns. They could lose out. They already lost to the Steelers. But okay, as you can see on the picture, each team, it says what they must do for the Raiders to make the playoffs. Okay, and they don't even show the Chiefs. But right now, I mean, it's not realistic at all, in my opinion, but the Chiefs could lose out, and the Raiders, if they were to win out, would win the division. Which only makes me think, man, and even without that scenario, it's like that Vikings game was such a big deal. Such a big deal for this team. If they could have just scored one touchdown, should Hunter Renfrow not have fumbled? I'm not going to blame it on him. It was a good punch out by the linebacker, but still, it's like we were in the red zone and everything. If the Raiders win that Vikings game, we too are 8-7. We're probably sitting above the Steelers right now. Probably not the Bills. But instead of needing all these teams to lose 2 games, we just need them to lose 1 game, right? So Bengals, Colts, Texans, Bills, they don't need to lose 1 game. And then we just need to win out and stay above the Steelers and Broncos. Luckily, with the Broncos and Colts, we kind of control our own destiny there. The Colts lost a big game to the Falcons. They need to lose 2 games, right? So if we beat them, that's their 2 games. We're above them as long as we win out. The Bengals, again, tough matchups coming up between the Chiefs and the Browns. I could see them losing both. They've already lost 1 game. They just need to lose 1 other game. That Bengals-Chiefs game is actually huge for the Raiders because it could go one way or the other. If the Bengals win that game and we beat the Colts, obviously at the end of the day, I'm saying all this assuming the Raiders win out. We very well could lose this weekend and ruined, right? But let's just say that the Raiders win out. If the Bengals win against the Chiefs, it is suddenly very possible that the Raiders could win the division the final week of the season. Now, the Chiefs play the Chargers week 18. Do I expect the Chargers to beat them? No. But they also have an interim head coach, and they played much better than they had all season against the Bills. They almost beat the Bills. So, and the Bills beat the Chiefs a couple weeks. So, and the Chiefs are struggling. Could it happen? Sure. It's a divisional game. Anything can happen any given Sunday, right? So I'm not expecting to win the division, but man, that would be insane. I mean, a home game in Vegas for the Raiders on an interim head coach, it's like, wow. I think the fact that the Raiders are even in this conversation is a testament to Antonio Pierce and just the coaching staff, the defense, Patrick Graham. So, but they already got what they needed from the Broncos. They got half of what they needed from the Bengals and the Colts and the Texans. The Texans have 2 divisional matchups coming up. They can lose one of those games. Suddenly the Raiders, should they win out, will be above them. So we just need, it says at the top, we need 6 of these 8 teams to do what they need to do for us to make it. In my opinion, the most realistic scenario for the Raiders is Browns, Bills, Raiders. So we need the Bengals, Colts, Texans, Steelers, and Broncos to lose games that they need to lose. Again, the Colts and Broncos, we control that. So that helps. So the teams that we can't control. Steelers, they're playing the Seahawks and the Ravens. It's possible that the Ravens will be sitting some starters the final week of the season if they have the 1 seed locked. If so, we're rooting hard for the Seahawks this weekend. Either way, we are. So, because we can't tell the future, right? Texans, again, 2 divisional matchups, Titans and Colts. We can handle the Colts. So, if we do, we can be rooting for the Colts the final week, and that's a very realistic thing that the Colts could beat the Texans, right? They could play spoiler on them. But so could the Titans. The Titans could absolutely play spoiler for either the Texans and the Jaguars the final week of the season. Because bear in mind that maybe the Colts, not the Colts, but maybe the Texans ruin what I'm saying, the whole Browns, Bills, Raiders thing, right? In the same breath, the Texans could go win the division, and the Jags could lose against the Titans the final week, and we would beat out the Jags, which, again, is insane to me considering they were looking at the 1 seed just like 4 weeks ago. So, when the Raiders lost to the Vikings, it felt like there was no hope. It felt like, yeah, they might as well be eliminated. And I remember seeing a graphic that said it might have actually been after the Charger game, but it might have been going into the Charger game. So I can't guarantee which one this was, but I feel like it was going into the Chiefs game. The Raiders had a 2% chance at the playoffs. 2%. And suddenly they beat the Chiefs, and now it's like, well, when you really look at this list, it's kind of realistic. It's actually very realistic. I heard, I think, Peter Schrager say that currently the Raiders have a 12% chance at making the playoffs. Okay. Like, I guess. But man, that would be fantastic to get another interim coach come in, take over for a coach that wasn't getting it done, losing record, and lead the team to the playoffs on a magical 4-game win streak, just like Rich Bisaccia did. Get that 7th seed, go in there, and hey, go out there and do what you can, right? Whether or not they do make the playoffs, it's like, can Mark Davis make the mistake again of allowing that interim head coach to leave? I think what Antonio Pierce has done already has earned him the spot. I think that beating the Chiefs is, at least right now, and this is probably, kind of an ego thing for the Chiefs, for any Chiefs fans that may hear this, but right now the goal for the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos is to beat the Chiefs. It's to beat them out, right? It's been a race for the past, 8-9 years that each of those teams has probably lost. So at the end of the day, that's what these teams are building for. I've seen many drafts where the Raiders come out of the first round with a corner or a safety, right? That's because they're trying to counter what the Chiefs are doing in the division. And then, you see playoff teams like, say, the Bills or the Bengals or even the Chiefs who are trying to beat those other teams in the playoffs. That's how they're building their teams, right? It's like there's levels to it. So right now we're in the process of still beating out the Chiefs. But hey, I don't care what Travis Kelce says. The Raiders defense demolished them. Okay? The Raiders defense has demoralized the Chargers, and they have outright beat now the Chiefs offense. I know they struggled, but hey, it's still a testament, in my opinion, to the Raiders defense. If the Raiders can make that a consistent thing, you add that quarterback to this team and look out. That's just my opinion on that. So I think project number one this offseason, priority number one, is absolutely finding that quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields or a guy like Jaden Daniels, or if you can, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., or even drafting a guy in the second or third round if you can, if you feel that he's got the talent to become an eventual starter. I guess you could run it back with Aiden O'Connell until perhaps that rookie shows that he can do it. But I don't know. I think, especially for a guy like Antonio Pierce, assuming that he is going to be the coach, he's probably going to be in win now mode, and also assuming Mark Davis gives him a short-term deal, he knows that he has to go out there and prove it. He still has to prove it. Like he said, like, his resume is on the grass. That's how it's going to be for him. So if he gets an off season to go out there and build his roster and gets a season to prove, like, hey, what can you really do? I think he's got to go out there and make a bunch of moves that say, I'm trying to win now. And that includes going for a quarterback, whether you trade up in the draft or you trade picks to go get Justin Fields, or I guess right now it'd probably be a good time to talk about it, but the Broncos made some waves. I don't know if it was last night or this morning, that the report came out that they are going to bench Russell Wilson these last 2 weeks of the season, even though, as you can see in this picture, they are very much in the playoff hunt. But they're going to bench him anyways for the same reason that the Raiders benched Derek Carr a year ago under Josh McDaniels, because he has a clause in his contract that should he get injured, he has guaranteed money coming his way regardless, right? The Broncos have determined he's not our guy. We do not want to pay him that guaranteed money that comes with injury. So we're not going to let him get injured. And I'm sure Russell Wilson feels like he's being done dirty. I saw tweets that showed, and that Russell Wilson's apparently liked on Twitter, that show that his stats, if not this entire season, at least in the past like 8 weeks or something, but I think it's all season, his stats are better than Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know. I'm not saying for the Raiders to go get Russell Wilson. Now, granted, I think Russell Wilson will have all the reason in the world to want to go out there and get revenge on the Broncos. And, I think having that guy on the Raiders to lead that revenge will be interesting. But as I said in our group chat with Josh, I don't think his personality mixes well with the Raiders locker room. I think the Raiders want dogs, and he is a Pomeranian. He can win the pretty pageant show, but he's not that dog that's going to go out there and lead a locker room anymore. Because I think everybody in the world has lost he has lost everybody's respect, it feels like. Former Seahawks teammates have talked massive shit about him. I'm sure in a year or two we'll hear from former Broncos teammates saying shit about him. And
I just think if you don't mind me chiming back in, while we're talking about Russell Wilson, the issue seems to be that he regards himself as if he's better than everyone. Like, you can't talk to me unless you schedule an appointment. And I think that absolutely alienates himself from the rest of the
Right.
locker room because everybody else is like, it's supposed to be a brotherhood. And, he's not treating it like a brotherhood. He's like, I'm the monarch and you guys are the peasants.
Yeah, and that is I think the perfect way to respond to that is he sounds like he would fit well with Josh McDaniels, not with Antonio Pierce. If that makes sense. If anybody reads what I'm putting out there, that is how I feel about that. So, I don't want to risk the locker room environment and culture by signing a guy who has a massive ego like Russell Wilson, or having a coach with a massive ego like whether it's Josh McDaniels or potentially hiring a new guy, right? I don't want that. I think what Antonio Pierce brings to this locker room and the culture of this team speaks layers to how this defense is playing. So, yeah.
So my question for you, Mike, is it's prediction time. Who's going to win this game versus the Colts?
It's tough. Technically, you're supposed to go first on this, but I'll go. I'll go.
No, I'll go.
Okay.
I'm going with the Raiders. That defense is humming. I'm picking Las Vegas. I know it's a road game, and the one player that really stands out to me on the Colts defense, and I don't know if I can ever let it go, is DeForest Buckner. I think he's a great defensive lineman, and he makes it super hard to run the ball. And like you said, the Chiefs players were able to get to Aiden O'Connell a lot.
Yep.
I don't know though. I just don't have a lot of faith in Gardner Minshew as like a long-term, him leading that team to the playoffs versus like, I don't know. I liked Anthony Richardson, but he's not going to be playing in this game. And I mean, you could even argue that the Colts might be having a worse season if Richardson was still the quarterback. Because I just think that the offenses are way different because Richardson brings that running ability that Gardner Minshew doesn't. But, this Raiders defense is causing turnovers. They're making life hell for quarterbacks. Malcolm Kuntz has been playing super well. Opposite, like on the opposite side of Max Crosby. It's all coming together, I think, for the Raiders defense.
Yeah.
Give me the Raiders.
I like it. I agree. I also picked the Raiders for the exact same reasons. You bring up DeForest Buckner, and yes, the Colts defense has been playing well this season. I don't know what happened against the Falcons, but I hope it continues. I need to see the Raiders win this game. I know after the Vikings game, it was like, oh man, let's tank, let's get a good pick, let's go pick a quarterback. But you know what, man? Like I think it was Joel who came in here and said, like, I don't really care about the position. It's more about the player that you get. And our rebuttal was like, well, trading draft picks, that sucks, man. Like that hurts. That hurts your roster construction. And it's true, but there are a lot of options out there. And at the end of the day, I just think at the time when the Vikings game ended, it felt like, nah, it's done. The season's over with. I don't care what our chances are for the playoffs. We play the Chiefs in 2 weeks. It's not happening, And the Broncos were playing good at that time. It was like, the Broncos will probably beat us. Like, let's be honest here. They should just tank. And then they win 2 games, and it's like, oh my God, they might make the playoffs. It's like, dude, what is going on here? So I take back a lot of what I said back then. And I think, you know what? This is the last thing I'll say about the Raiders. I think I said the exact same thing in 2021 when the Raiders went and made the playoffs as I'm about to say now. And this time I'm going to mean it because I said it. I think I said it in 2021. 2021 season and now this season has proved to me that I really should never root for the Raiders to lose a game. Like obviously I understand the idea of tanking and the value that it has for a franchise to go and get a high draft pick, draft a big player like a quarterback, right? But even when it feels like the season's over, whether it was McDaniels against the Lions, and it's like, we're not doing shit this year, or losing to the Vikings 3-0. It feels like the season's over, and yet it's not. It's not over until you're eliminated. So until the Raiders are eliminated from the playoffs, I'm done rooting for them to lose. I'm done. And I think I said that in 2021, but this season has officially proved it to me. Like, do not count your team out until they are eliminated from the playoffs.
Which brings me to this question, Mike. So all of this, no, 6 of the 8 must happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So does it matter which, like in each bracket, like?
Right. So I explained it while you were gone, but basically right now, what it's showing right now is the 4th seed and below. So 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then below the 7th, which is the Colts, are the remaining teams that are eligible for the playoffs. What I see as realistic is either the Jags or Texans win the AFC South. And when I say realistic, I mean for the Raiders to make the playoffs. The Raiders still have a chance. I think you mentioned it. The Raiders have a good chance at actually not good. They have a chance at winning the division. They need the Chiefs to win out. And everything I say, regardless, is assuming the Raiders win out. They could lose to the Colts. They could lose to the Broncos. It's ruined. But let's say the Raiders win out. What do they need to happen? As it says, it needs 6 of the 8 things to happen here. I think, and anything that has a check mark means one of those things has already happened. Or I'm sorry, for that team. So next to the Browns, it says they must lose out. They've already won against the Texans. They're going to make the playoffs if they haven't already been clinched. No matter what, I see the Browns as the 5th seed in the playoffs. That's for sure. The 6th and 7th seed are completely open. The Raiders could absolutely be the 6th seed. I see them as potentially the 7th seed, but I saw a Peter Schrager video that said they could be the 6th seed if things went in their way. The Raiders can handle business against the Colts and the Broncos. If they beat both of those teams, the Broncos already lost to the Patriots. They're done. They're below the Raiders should the Raiders win out. And regardless, they play the Broncos. So, again, they control that, right? They control the thing with the Colts because the Colts just lost to the Falcons. They needed to lose 2 games. They lost one of them. They lose to the Raiders. They're cooked. The Texans, they need to lose 2 games. They already lost to the Browns. They have 2 division rivals that they're going to face. Either one of them could play spoiler. The Colts could face them the final week and beat them. It won't matter for us if the Colts win because we already handled business against them. The Steelers, they play the Seattle Seahawks and the Ravens. That's a big question mark because let's say they beat the Seahawks and the Ravens have already clinched the 1 seed going into that final week. The Ravens could bench their starters. So
I don't know if they'll do that again because of what happened a couple of years ago.
What happened?
They benched their starters in the final week of the season, and then they had the first round bye, and then they got eliminated first round of the playoffs because they were rusty.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's it's possible they play the starters, and either way, they could play their backups and still be the Steelers. Like the Steelers' offense is not that good. But I'd like to see the Seahawks beat the Steelers and just get that over with and not be worried about that. But the way I see it as realistic is Jags or Texans for the AFC South, Browns, Bills, Raiders. The Raiders need a lot of help, but I think it's all very realistic. You can go team by team. The Bengals, they face the Chiefs and the Browns. Give me 2 losses. All they need is 1. The Colts, all they need to lose is lose to the Raiders, and that's done. Texans, they've already lost 1. All they need to lose is either to the Titans or the Colts, and that's done. You can also go back to the Jags. All they need to lose is to the Panthers, they're not, or the Titans. The Titans could very well play spoiler, and the Jags will be below the Raiders. And then it's just a matter of who wins that division, right? The Texans are getting Stroud back, so I see the Texans, Steelers, and Bills as the biggest threats to the Raiders. I'm just going with forward, assuming the Browns and Bills are the 5th and 6th seeds. What I care about most is how does the AFC South play out, and how do the Steelers play? Because I'm not worried about the Bengals.
So I just wanted to clarify. So any of the 6 of these 8 need to happen.
Yeah. So what happened on each one? It's the team and then what they need to happen.
Yeah, no. I understand that, but it's any combination of 6.
Yep.
Okay. Plus the Raiders winning out.
Yes.
Now, one thing that jumps out to me is, I didn't realize that the Browns are like kind of cemented in in their wild card spot. Joe
Mhm.
Flacco has been playing super well, and I know we're not really talking about the Browns. How insane would it be if the Browns went on to win the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco as their quarterback? Like, because
Oh,
weren't they a wild card team when they won the Super Bowl when he was with the Ravens? Like a
pro.
wild card team with what was it?
I know they went
Like
to
a Hall
Denver.
of Fame defense. Like, I mean, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of Hall of Famers besides maybe Myles Garrett on the Browns defense, but like, they're playing at such an elite level. It's crazy.
That's why I still think Kevin Stefanski is the head coach or the coach of the year this season. But then I was reminded on like TikTok that Dan Campbell kind of does deserve it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think what the Browns are doing this year, like they are a fucking threat. They are an absolute threat the way that they're playing right now. Their defense is great. And Joe Flacco, I was listening to the Greenlight podcast. That's Chris Long's podcast. And he said, if Joe Flacco played in this offense his entire career, first ballot Hall of Famer. First ballot Hall of Famer. Because he's playing so good right now. It's actually insane.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, real quick, before we jump ship to the 49ers, Paulina did ask, or did say, folks, he said the same thing about the Cardinals game last season. Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe this was referring to the Vikings game. On how the Vikings game kind of ruined, derailed the whole playoff thing. And last season, losing to the Cardinals was huge in the long run. I think that's what Paulina is making the reference to.
sorry, you said, what was your last part that you said?
About a game that happened earlier on in the season going back to biting the playoff hopes. Like the Raiders last season was the Cardinals game that ended out, biting them in the butt.
Yeah.
This
I mean, this is the
year
thing.
might be the Vikings game.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha. 100%. Because I was confused because there's last year's Cardinals game that killed the Raiders moving forward, towards the end of the season. But then there's also that, and I know she said last year, so yeah, she is correct. So this is something I say every year to my dad. And I literally, before the podcast, we were talking about it. Okay. The Raiders are 7-8, along with the Broncos at the bottom of this list, right? Then the rest of the teams up till the Bengals and the Jags, besides the Browns, all of them are 8-7. So if you just give me either the Vikings game or the Bears game this season, you could throw in the Week 4 Charger game or even the Week 3 Steelers game. If you give me one win in one of those 4 games, we're 8-7, and we don't even need to win out to make the playoffs. That's just one game. One game that makes the difference, right? That's huge. So yeah, she's dead on. I mean, last year the Cardinals game was like they were up 20-0 at halftime and they blew it. And there were multiple games like that. The Jaguars game last year, there were other games. So that's just been a thing with the Raiders in many recent years is like they're good enough to win these games, and yet they don't. And then there's other games against like, say, a really good Chargers team or something like that where they win and it's like, holy shit, we beat the Chargers. And then a week or two later, they play a team like, say, the Panthers this year, and we lose. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, if we win these games that we're supposed to win, we're a playoff team. But whether it's the quarterback play from a guy like Derek Carr or this season, Aiden O'Connell, which I'm not blaming him for like the Bears game or whichever games that he was not in, obviously. That was Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh McDaniels. But in recent years, it's been like Derek Carr being up and down, right? And then also a really shitty defense. It's like, this year we have the defense, and now we don't have the quarterback, right? It's like, so as I've said multiple times this podcast, just give me that quarterback. If this defense can keep it up with the leadership from Antonio Pierce and Patrick Graham, sky is the limit. We can finally be that team that goes out there and wins the games that they're supposed to win. And hopefully have a fucking, 12-win season, 13-win season next year. Maybe. Is that realistic? Probably not, but a guy can dream, right? If we can go and make the playoffs with another interim head coach, who knows what we can do if we have the right quarterback.
Yeah, well said. I'm ready to move on to the 49ers section. Are you ready to move on, Mike?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say the 49ers played on Christmas night, and man, it was a huge bah humbug. You know what I'm saying? Now, all right. I just want to say that I fully predicted that the 49ers were going to win this game, and I thought that the 49ers were far and beyond the best team in the NFL, and that, they just, they're just so talented. Like, who is going to beat this team? And we found out on Monday Night Football that, the Ravens defense is like, I just thought that maybe, the Ravens kind of have been sluggish on offense, here and there. Their defense has been absolutely solid, but the Ravens are absolutely a fantastic team. And they made a statement on Monday Night Football on Christmas. They didn't just beat the 49ers, they embarrassed the 49ers. And Brock Purdy as the MVP, just it's gone now. Like, you can't, I don't think you can, besides statistics, I really think that like Purdy needed to have at least a solid game if he wanted to like continue to have the support, for the MVP award. But I just think that like, Christian McCaffrey probably jumped him in like the MVP voting. It's like, all right, maybe it isn't Brock Purdy because like, four picks in a game, that was just, it was a meltdown. And, I'll go through my notes and everything on like, what stood out. There were certain plays where, the defender just made a good play and it was just like, kind of bad luck. There were also a couple plays where it's like, man, if you don't make this mistake right here, it changes the game. So let me go through my notes real quick. Starting from the beginning of the game. So Kittle had a first good drive, and he, I want to say there was a completion that he had that was like 50 yards, and I'm sitting here thinking like, yeah, this is just going to be another Niner game. They're just going to beat on another team, and they didn't. And then so they get all the way down the field like pretty quick. Shanahan's calling a very pass heavy game, and then Brock Purdy misread the coverage and threw an interception in the end zone that was absolutely, it killed that drive, right? And then shortly after, the 49ers forced a safety on an intentional grounding, which is fine. The Niners are ahead and they're going to get the ball back. So the Niners are up 2-0. And, a lot of people highlight that play because Lamar Jackson was like, tripping on a ref. But, you're sort of taught in football to act as if they're not there or, just kind of play around them. Like they don't, I feel like if there is a pass that tips off a ref and you catch it, I think it's still a completed pass, and I would actually be very curious to see if they would call it a completed pass or if they just kind of count as like the ground. But nonetheless, they force a safety. And then the 49ers go on this drive and there's a ticky-tack. Well, in my opinion, it was kind of a ticky-tack defensive holding call that extended the 49ers drive after the 4th and 1 stop in the fourth quarter. In the first quarter, excuse me. The 49ers didn't get it on 4th and 1. And they called a hold on this play that the Niners, I want to say they were running to the left. It was kind of maybe a sort of a screen. And the Niners, I feel like, benefited from that call and it extended their drive. And I want to say they went on to kick a field goal to finish off that drive. which put them at 5-0. And it's like, all right, slowly but surely the Niners are putting on points. It's fine. And then the Ravens get the ball, and I want to say this was the next Ravens drive, but I didn't make a note of it. But Tayshaun Gibson had 2 costly penalties that led to the Ravens' first field goal, which, obviously put the game within 2 points. 49ers get the ball back. Purdy was intercepted on a deflected outside screen pass, and I want to say it was the one where the defensive lineman just jumped up, tipped it up to Kyle Hamilton. And that obviously was killer. And you're thinking, well, Brock's going to probably bounce back from this. Like, he's going to be fine. But the 49ers did not have any answers on defense for the Ravens offense. And the Ravens just drive down the field. The 49ers all night didn't have any answers. And I put a bullet point here. The Ravens defense is a problem. If the 49ers do end up facing the Ravens again this season, it will have to be in the Super Bowl. And those linebackers and that secondary is going to be a problem. So the 49ers luckily won't be going into a potential Super Bowl rematch with this team without having seen them first and having to, be able to make the adjustments, because nothing that they had was working really against the Ravens offense or the defense. It was just an ugly game. Purdy had a 3rd interception in the first half alone, and he tried to force it to George Kittle, and it was deflected for an interception. So you could probably make the argument that it probably should have been caught by Kittle. And funny enough, Kyle Hamilton, I want to say, drew a penalty on Aaron Banks because he got knocked to the ground, and then Aaron Banks just kind of like laid on top of him. And I think they probably called that holding on Aaron Banks. And then Kyle Hamilton gets up and catches the deflected interception. Like, it's kind of one of those points where if you don't give up on a play, like, good things happen. And yeah, it was kind of lucky, but I feel like there would be a handful of defenders who would just, stay down or check themselves out of the play. The next thing I wrote was the Ravens are clearly a top 2 team in the NFL. If not on Monday night, they probably show that they're the number 1 team in the NFL right now. And honestly, I want to say, I didn't write this down, but the Ravens and the entire AFC North, that is a tough division. Like, the 49ers are 1-3 facing that division this year.
Every single one of those teams have a winning record, and they're in the playoff hunt. That's insane.
Yeah, although the Steelers are I'm not really sure how they have that winning record, but besides the Steelers, man, the Browns, the Bengals, the Ravens, man, what a talented division.
Yeah. I guess quick questions. First off, and then I'll let you get back to your notes. Christian McCaffrey had 14 carries for 103 yards. Just away. And then he also had 6 catches for 28 yards. Some of that probably came with Darnold, specifically the passing, receiving game. Why do you think they weren't going to McCaffrey more? Because he had a 7.4 yard per rush average. That's successful as fuck. Why didn't they run the ball more? Because like you said, you think that perhaps McCaffrey's chances of MVP went up above Purdy. I think this game absolutely proves that to me, because he was successful in this game. Purdy was not. And then I have an opinion on Purdy too, but go ahead.
So to answer your question, it's really hard to tell, what Shanahan's plan was, but I think from the gates, he just kind of wanted to come out with a pass first, game plan. And he thought that maybe he would kind of close the door and Brock Purdy would, prove that he's the MVP. But, Brock kind of played the 49ers out of the game. And, I've complained in the past about Kyle Shanahan's ability to adjust in game. And, I feel like McCaffrey finished off with good numbers, or solid numbers, on the yards per carry and everything. But it kind of felt like during the game, the 49ers were on offense, they were getting desperate. They were down by a couple touchdowns, nearing the end of the game. So you can't really, if you do rush a lot, you're going to run off a ton of clock. And even then, the 49ers still, I would have to go back and watch, but even when they're down big, they motion every play. They take off so much time off the clock. And it's no wonder why Shanahan has such a terrible record when he's down late in games, or even down by more than 3 at halftime. He's like 1-30 probably at this point, or ballpark, like around there.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Is that something to worry about in the playoffs if you guys get off to a 10-point, disadvantage for the whole term is, in a game against the Lions or the Eagles or the Cowboys or even the Rams? If you're down 10 points under Kyle Shanahan, you might need to be worried, right?
No, if you're down 10 points in the playoffs, I'm sorry, but I don't know if the 49ers have answers for that. They're a team that they play their best when they're ahead.
Yeah. They just keep driving. They just, yeah.
I don't want to call them like time wasters, but man, you would have to find me another team that is better than this 49ers team in history, that when they're ahead, you can, like, how many other teams have came back against this Niner team? You know what I mean? And I don't think the Niners have blown any like late games this year.
Right. Yeah, it almost feels like they're like, I don't want to call them this because it's definitely the wrong term, but as far as like, if they're in a lead, they do their thing and they win. If they're behind, they do their thing and they lose. It's like they're one-dimensional. It's either they win because they're winning or they lose because they're losing, which is really weird.
They either get blown out. They either blow out the other team or they like embarrass themselves.
Right. Yeah.
There's no in between.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. It was weird to me because it felt like in the first quarter, like they were running the ball well with McCaffrey. He'd get like 7-yard gains and stuff. But they just kept insisting on throwing the ball. And I understand the first drive was really good with the pass to Kittle and whatnot, but there came a point where it was pretty clear, like, the Ravens were really doing a great job against the pass. This goes into my Purdy opinion, which is I went into the game, I was with my stepdad, massive Niner fan, and I was like, man, the thing I've noticed about Purdy this year that is really impressive to me for a young quarterback who really became the starter this season, like the true starter, the thing that's really cool about him is no matter what, you'll never see him get rattled. I've never seen him get rattled. He could be up 40, he could be down 10, or just throw a pick, and you see his face, and it's like the same, And I think Jalen Hurts is pretty well known for that, but like Purdy really wears that, And this was the first game where I was like, no, I think he's rattled, And granted, I don't like. I only fault him for 2 of the picks. I know he got 4. The 2 picks that were deflected at the like line of scrimmage, that's like, how often is that going to get picked off?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he learns from it and he goes, all right, if I see a defender in my line of sight towards the receiver that I'm going to throw to, I'm throwing a rainbow, but that takes more time, and then a defender can get in and tackle that guy or even deflect it, right? It's tough. Maybe he has to sidearm it like Stafford and get it away from the guy. I don't know, but I just have a hard time blaming him for those. There are certain ways where it's obvious, like, yeah, you should have threw it higher. I didn't really get to watch it over, you know, but 4 picks is 4 picks. It was not a good game from him. And then he gets out with the stinger, which I'm sure he'll be fine. But it's like he was clearly rattled at a certain point in this game. It was like he's not playing like himself. He forced a pass, I think, to Kittle, and that was like his 4th pick, where it was just like the defender was.
That was his second interception.
Okay. Well, the one where he threw it a little behind his receiver, I think it was Kittle, and the defender came in and got his arm in there and deflected it, and then another guy picked it.
Yeah.
That was by far the worst interception. Like that was the one where it was like,
no, it wasn't. It was
the first one. The first one was bad. Yeah, the first one was bad. That was like you didn't read it right, and also you just couldn't see the other guy standing there close enough to pick it off. Yeah, the first one was bad, but it's like regardless, he forced it on both of those throws, and that's something we hadn't seen. So clearly, this Ravens defense is legit. Whether or not I feel the 2 deflected ones were like really a testament, you know, it's more of like that defense they were there to fucking play. So
yeah, so the 49ers' first touchdown drive was just the McCaffrey show. They absolutely got McCaffrey going, and you know, it was just all him on that drive. Then, preceding that, the 49ers couldn't contain Lamar to end the first half, and the Ravens extended the lead 16-12. And then, the 49ers come back from halftime, and Purdy just has a bad pass that should have been interception. It hit the defender in the face, and then, the 49ers had to punt, and Mitch Wishnowsky, he drew he didn't draw. He committed an unnecessary roughness penalty that was like, not to make a pun on the word, but it was very unnecessary. He hit the returner late out of bounds. It was just like, whatever could go wrong did go wrong, for the 49ers on Monday. And then the 49ers just had no answers for Lamar. Their defense, I felt like, during the game, I kind of felt like they were playing Lamar similar to the way that they were playing Jalen Hurts on the Eagles game. But Lamar was just making them pay. Like, I felt like they gave Lamar all day to throw, and Lamar was able to just kind of, he would just get outside the pocket and look for a receiver, and a guy would get open. Jalen Hurts, for whatever reason, couldn't find anybody who was open, but the Ravens did not have that problem. Let's see. I also made a note. Imagine if this Ravens team was healthy. Imagine if they still had their running backs.
Yep.
Yikes. Let's see. Purdy with a 4th interception on a short throw. It's been a terrible game for Brock, and I even wrote goodbye MVP. That sealed the deal. It's like, you know what? It's not happening. I don't know if you're going to be able to ever change people's minds back in your favor. It was a huge detrimental, it was a huge detriment to Brock's MVP argument. And then so, after the interception, the defense was unfocused, and the game was getting ugly after Zay Flowers scored a touchdown. It was almost, the defense just left Flowers wide open in the end zone. And then, there the Ravens go, just piling it on. The 49ers continued the trend of this season of either blow out the other team or crap the bed. So the 49ers chose the latter on that. And then I wrote, Purdy is clearly rattled. Nearly picked throwing behind Debo. Did you see the play that I'm talking about?
I'm sure I did.
Debo was running a slant, and Purdy threw it behind Debo, and it nearly got picked and taken to the house. So which would have been Purdy's fifth, if not sixth interception, if the one that hit the defender in the face was caught.
Yeah.
And then I even wrote, get Aiyuk involved. Where was Brandon Aiyuk all game?
Yeah, until
Darnold went in.
Darnold went in, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, they need to get Aiyuk, in the game. They need to get, he was in the game, but they need to get him involved. And then there was a ticky-tack penalty called on Kinlaw. Kinlaw got off on a play that was very slow. Kinlaw's get off on that play was very slow, and we need to keep an eye on that because, you had mentioned to me like the week prior that Kinlaw did not look good to you.
Yes. I'm forgetting what game that was. Okay, give me the last 2 games the Niners have played. Oh, it was the game where Hargrave and Armstead were out. Yeah.
Cardinals game.
Yeah, he was getting plowed by the guards, and they were running success. They ran for over 200 yards on the Niners. That was part of the reason why.
Yeah, so Kinlaw's get off was slow, and then he was kind of double teamed, and then he was, it appeared as though maybe he grabbed onto the one of the linemen, and they called a penalty on that. So that also stood out to me. And then there was a big stop by Kevin Givens on 3rd and goal where Lamar was trying to run it in, and I thought he was going to get it. And that play right there kept the 49ers in the ball game because, it was already kind of garbage time, by the time the fourth quarter rolled around and Darnold was in the game. But that kind of like, if there was any chance that the 49ers were going to come back and have an opportunity to win this game, it was going to be, they had to limit it to just only allowing the Ravens to get up by 21. If it was more, forget it. And then I want to say that the Ravens, I want to say they went for it. Oh, no. I need to do better. I need to do better with these notes and be more specific. But I think the 49ers got a turnover on downs on offense, and I just figured that's game with a quarter left. Like, there's a full quarter of football, and I just felt like the game was over.
Wasn't it on a 4th and long, and they went for it, and it was like whoever was the quarterback, whether it was Purdy or Darnold, it was like they threw it in the grass. I was just like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah. So Darnold got my memo. I wrote, get Aiyuk involved, and Sam Darnold, he threw to Aiyuk, and they got a touchdown out of the drive. In fact, he got the memo so much that he threw to Brandon Aiyuk too much. There was a play where he took a shot for the end zone, and Aiyuk was so gassed that he didn't even finish running his route. And you just see, like, after the play, they showed Brandon Aiyuk, and he's like, got his hands on his hips. He's tired. Man, Aiyuk was featured on that drive, and he was great. And then after that, Purdy got cleared to play, but they still kept Sam Darnold in the game. This game really tarnished Purdy's MVP argument, in my opinion. This is what I wrote down. I've only got 5 more bullet points left, so I'll just be quick. Darnold is throwing to Aiyuk and driving down the field. I wrote that in all caps because I was like, thank you. He was getting Aiyuk super involved in the game. 2nd and goal.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think if the Niners had just focused on McCaffrey and Aiyuk and then, go to Kittle whenever he's open, you might win the game, especially if you run the ball more often early on and you don't allow those turnovers to happen that just killed you guys. I think the Niners can run the ball and win the game. If the Raiders can do that on the Chiefs, the Niners can do that to any team, right?
Yeah. And what's so crazy to me is that in the first half, Brandon Ayuk had one catch on one target for I think 18 yards.
Yeah.
And then he finished the game with like 6 catches for 113.
Yeah.
Like, and he got a lot of that when the game was already out of reach. Where, why are you not featuring Brandon Ayuk? And then, of course, me having him on my fantasy team, I was like stressing out. I didn't really need it at that point because I think it was clear that I was moving on. But still, I just was like, for the 49ers' sake, they need to get him involved. It's not working. Like whatever they're doing is not working, and they're not even trying to throw it to Ayuk. Obviously, I still haven't watched the film, and Ayuk could have very well been covered on all those plays, but I don't know. I just feel like he probably was open, because he's always open. 2nd and goal and a few yards, and they go for a rush to wind down the clock to the 2-minute warning. What a waste of time. The Niners had an opportunity to make it a one-score game. Why the hell are you running the football there? You have an opportunity. If you don't get the 2nd and goal play, you still can run another play before the 2-minute warning. It was just, what a waste of time. And then Darnold freezes. He like froze on 3rd and goal. And the clock is winding. All right, give up, I guess. I need to do better with these notes. False start. There goes 5 more yards on 4th and goal. And then Darnold throws an interception. I wrote Darnold's going to Darnold. Game over. Honestly, just turn the page to the next one. The 49ers they've got a very easy game coming up this week. And they need to do some intensive studying in the film room. They got embarrassed on Christmas night.
Yeah, they got embarrassed. And a lot of it was self-inflicted, mostly through the passing game on Purdy. But I also think the play calling clearly could have been better. And I think really at the end of the day, this can be one of those games that the Niners, just like that 3-game win streak, where it's like, you know what, maybe they needed this. Maybe on an optimistic side, it's like, you know what, they needed this. They needed to check themselves. They needed to find some more flaws in their game or in their play calling, whatever it may be, whether it's Shanahan or Purdy. Look at this game in retrospect and be like, okay, I see where I can be better. And maybe this is exactly what they need to head into the playoffs and go, win some big games. And if so, then, that's a good thing. Because, I don't know if you can find a picture of the NFC playoff picture, but you guys still have the 1 seed right now. And you have 2 very winnable games moving forward. Which obviously we can get into the first one soon. But I guess my last question here, which really pertains to, I guess, this game and specifically the playoff picture. Are you scared of the Lions right now potentially jumping you on the 1 seed? Because I think you're now tied 11-4 with them. You have the advantage on them, probably in conference or divisional wins or whatever it may be. But they're right there. And I can pull up their remaining schedule if you want to look at the Niners or something. But
they've got Dallas on Saturday night, and then they've got the Vikings.
Dallas is tough. The Vikings will be fighting for a playoff spot. So, I know one thing is I'm going to be watching that Lions and Cowboys game. That's for sure. That's a very likely playoff matchup. And clearly it's huge for both teams.
I'm not concerned with the Lions because I think the 49ers have a good opportunity to win out.
Yeah, they have a good opportunity to just handle their own business, I guess my question to pair with that, though, is do the Rams scare you?
I said this earlier in the season. I was like, keep an eye on the Rams. Do you remember when they played against the Niners? And I was like, all right, they played very well. It was a very close game, and I think it came down to the end. They got Cooper Kupp back, and it's like you don't just have to focus on Puka Nacua now. And Puka Nacua had a great game against the 49ers, but I don't know if they scare me, but I think the fact that if it's a must-win game for them, it's like they I wouldn't be scared because ultimately the Niners are making the playoffs. Like,
yeah,
but they do.
Go ahead.
I think they would probably be hungrier.
They pose a massive threat for sure. Obviously, you're going to be rooting for the Cowboys this weekend. Although that's kind of weird to say, but for the sense of securing the 1 seed, the Cowboys beating the Lions, I think, secures it for you guys. Unless you lose to the Commanders, but you won't. Spoiler for my, our picks, but come on. But if the Lions beat the Cowboys, you guys beat the Commanders. Like, the Rams very well might be fighting for that 6th or 7th seed, or just to get into the playoffs, period, and like, they will absolutely be more desperate than the Niners. But the Niners could also look at that game as like, hey, we got to get this 1 seed. We need home field advantage, and that could be the drive that really gets them to go there. But I think the Rams pose a threat right now that is so interesting because it's like, 2 years ago they won the Super Bowl. Last year they stunk it up, and to start the season they stunk it up, but then they get Cooper Kupp back, and Kieran Williams is suddenly like really fucking good, and they have Puka, and I haven't heard much from Aaron Donald, but like their defense is way better than expected. Like on paper they were like trash, but they're actually playing fine. So, and Sean McVay is Sean McVay. Like he's a great example, like a Mike Tomlin, of just a coach that is a massive difference for their team,
Mm-hmm.
So
I say before we butter up the Rams too much, they're not going to be playing the 49ers this week. The 49ers are going to be playing the Commanders, and really I don't think we have to say much about this game. The Niners, there's no way the 49ers are going to drop this game. They struggled against the Ravens, but I really think that they're going to bounce back. The Commanders are nowhere near as good as Baltimore is, and it is going to be a road game for the 49ers, but I see Purdy bouncing back and playing much better. I don't think that he could play much worse than he did against Baltimore. And really, I'm just worried that the 49ers are going to overcompensate for their lack of use of McCaffrey against the Ravens and just make it a McCaffrey show and like him get 8 touchdowns to just solidify my fate on my fantasy football season.
I wasn't even thinking about your fantasy team until you mentioned that, but I saw that the Commanders faced the Jets like this past week or a week ago, and it was like the worst offense versus the worst defense, and the Commanders have the worst defense. So the Niners offense having a bad week against the Ravens, getting pissed off and like, oh, we gotta go out there and win, guys. Who are we gonna face next week? Oh, you're facing the worst defense in the league. Oh, have fun. Yeah, McCaffrey's gonna go off, dude. You better pray that Ayuk gets some fucking fantasy points to start this game, because
McCaffrey's gonna at least have 2 touchdowns. At least,
probably
he's going to at least have 2, and it's going to kill me. And I really just I want to win the championship so bad, dude. I really like. If everybody who watches this video, McCaffrey, if you watch this, just please take it easy on me. I've had a very good year. You've had a very good year. Let's look out for each other's interests. You guys can win the game. Letting Jordan Mason, get some love. Letting Ayuk get some love.
What you need to hope for is you need to hope that Ayuk goes off early on in this game. McCaffrey somehow doesn't get any touchdowns. And then in like the late third quarter or right as the fourth quarter starts, all the backups come in.
No, McCaffrey's getting touchdowns, dude. There's no way he doesn't. Like I'm going to be sitting on the couch. Like, all right, this will be like one of the only times this season where the Niners score a touchdown. I'm gonna be like, fuck, just like throw my hat down. But yeah, to sort of demonstrate how this game is kind of is, or like give it an analogy. Have you ever heard, like a parent say to their kid, oh, just wait until we get home, sort of implying that the kid is going to, get hit with the belt or like, or whatever. I don't know if that's a touchy subject. I'm really not trying to be like, hit on anything that will, I guess string any nerves with people, but man, this is the closest that I can think where the Niners are just like, they just got embarrassed on national television. And then the Commanders, they just so happen to be next. It's like, I'm taking out my anger on you. Or you remember that Key and Peele sketch where, they have the bully and, I think Jordan Peele's character is like, it's like, I'm taking out my anger on you because my dad doesn't love me. I'm going on a tangent. I know Paulina commented like an hour ago that she's waiting for the tangent, but there I go. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's going to be playing. I think the Commanders have given up. They want to get a quarterback in the draft. So
add them to the list of teams that are probably going to go draft a quarterback. Man, yeah. I mean, the Niners are winning this game, and it's no question about it. Yeah, I mean, that'll be fun for Niner fans. It's going to be very scary for you, though, for fantasy. So,
Yeah, so everybody pray for me. That's the show. I'm probably going to add the Commanders preview to the Ravens thing because I feel like it's just all connected. And well. I don't really feel like there's much to discuss for that Commanders game. It's like even you were just talking about the Rams a minute ago. Like, we're already looking ahead. I don't think there's any way in hell that the Niners drop this game. And if I'm lucky, McCaffrey will take it easy. He'll pace himself for the playoffs, huh?
Yeah. One last thing. Can you pull up the tweet I just sent you? If you can, before you share your screen, before you share it, go to the original tweet first, and then at the end, scroll to like the one that I sent you.
Okay, so the JPA football tweet or the Mad Raider?
Mad Raider. Should be the most recent one I sent you.
Okay, let me do this.
Okay, so you could do the show more. I love the photo. Obviously, this is back to the Raiders just really quick, but Chiefs star Travis Kelce says, I'm assuming on his podcast, it's frustrating. It's a frustrating fucking experience right now when talking about the team's recent struggles. We handed the team, that team, the Raiders, a win on Christmas. We literally played Santa and gave them a present. It's not just one guy. It's not just me playing like dog shit. It's not just us not being on the same page passing-wise. Everybody's in this fucking thing together. Everybody at some point isn't being accountable. Okay, now the quote tweet, which is 1,000% true. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's what happened. The Raiders punched him in the mouth. Oh my God. You were talking like 5 minutes ago and I was looking at this and I was like trying not to laugh my ass off, dude. Oh my God. Yeah, that's the show.
That's the show, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.